All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, man, I hope we're not disturbing you.
Nah,
Not anymore. Not anymore,
not at
right?
all. Never.
Ah. All right. Happy. Is it too late to say Happy New Year?
I don't think
Do
so.
we, we,
I
we
mean,
did. Did we
technically,
do a
it's a new
show in
year all
January?
year.
It is a right. It is a new year all year. Do we do a new show? Do we do a show in January before shot?
Dude, I don't remember what I did this morning. It's been crazy. What have you been up
Totally.
to?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked. I was at Shot Show. Obviously, we saw each other there and did some live shows.
We did.
I did not get the crud. Did you?
I did not. No, but lots of people did. I heard like 25 people I talked to. Like, yeah,
Wow.
some said they got it like 2-3 days or a week later. I'm like, I don't know if you really can consider Shot Show being the one that did.
Right. Where's the limit? What's
Right.
the time limit? What is the time limit? I'm not sure.
Right. Sure.
But I came back and I did take it easy for a day.
Nice.
And then I had to edit a show and put a show out and went back to work. The Friday after I got back from Shot, I came back on a Sunday. What is happening, C&T? Good to see you, brother, man. It's good to have you around. After I got back from Shot, I went down to Harrisburg for the Great American Outdoor Show.
Which we missed each other there.
Yes. I was there the first weekend. You were there. When were you there?
Monday. Then I left Monday, came back Tuesday and taught Wednesday, Thursday, left there on Friday, drove to Rhode Island on Friday.
You are a lunatic, man. You're a lunatic. I had nothing like that. I did get stuck in this snowstorm on Sunday on the way back.
Mm-hmm.
So that was it. And then back to work, back to reality. I had classes all weekend. So
nice.
Work, man. Work.
Yeah, I did my first 18-hour class out of New York State, actually, at Rhode Island. Somebody, Bob, that I was, Bill Dalpy and I, actually in the same training counselor class, the Dalp. Bob was in that class with us, and he reached out to me, goes, hey, I got a bunch of people here in Rhode Island that want to take the New York class and apply in New York City. You want to come out? So we went out, family vacation, went out there, spent the weekend in Rhode Island, and I taught a bunch of people in Rhode Island.
Oh, that's cool. I think when I took off for Shot, just before I left for Shot, I got my New Jersey permit came in. Ooh. Woohoo. Yeah, that only cost me $650.
How much? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And you got I'm assuming you got that so you can teach classes, or you got that just so you can go into New Jersey?
I got it just so I can go to Jersey and not get arrested. Yeah, it's completely ridiculous, right? I go down to visit Petrolino, I don't know, 4 times a year, maybe 5 times a year. I'm down in Jersey,
right?
But it was a lot of money, and it wasn't. It was $50 for the class, the online class, and then $100 for fingerprints, and then $275 for the qualification, and $225 for the permit. So it was.
That is a lot.
It took 11 months to get the 2 permits, but whatever. Who cares? It's done. It's over with.
It is.
Done. It is. All right. I am excited about our guest tonight.
Me too.
His PR person reached out to me and said, hey, I've got a book, or this gentleman's got a book, and he would love to be on some shows. And I'm like, let's get him on. And we're going to bring up our guest tonight is Robert O'Connor. There he is.
How are you, Robert?
I'm very well, and thanks for inviting me and letting me talk with you and your listeners. It's a thrill.
Yeah, we're glad to have you on. This is really cool. So where in the country do you live?
I live in Memphis, Tennessee. However, it's not cold enough here, so my wife and I are moving to Minneapolis in March.
Usually don't hear people say that.
I know. That's just to make you laugh. We've got a grandson. We've got family up there, and all our children have moved far, far away. So we want to be near the grandson. So
yep.
We'll see how we do. We'll see how we do next December and January.
Next winter, right? We could be talking to you in a year, and you're like, yeah. So we're moving back south.
If we move back south, we might just keep going and go to Florida and be serious about it.
All the way down to the Keys.
Oh my gosh, that's nuts. I don't think I'd like to move to Central Tennessee or Middle Tennessee.
Middle. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to move to Middle Tennessee. I think that'd be kind of nice. My daughter goes to college down there, and I think that would be good. That's what I think.
Nashville, which we have a great rivalry with, is exploding. Absolutely exploding. Just
Wow.
Oh man, 30 years ago I lived in Nashville.
really.
Yes, I lived there for 7 months, I think it was. Everybody's a musician, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was playing in a band and traveling and stuff, and
Ah!
everyone's a musician, right? And the going joke used to be, "What do you call a musician without a girlfriend?" And the answer was homeless.
Oh, that's
And
funny.
I thought it was funny too, until I had to ask my girlfriend if I could move my stuff into her apartment, and then it wasn't so funny.
Mm-mm.
So
Have
then
you, Charlie, do you know that you must know the joke about how you can tell the risers under the drums are level?
oh yeah, the drill comes out of both sides of the drummer's mouth.
Yes, yes, yes. You were a musician.
Oh my god!
I am not. I partake in the listening of it. That's as far as I go.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
it
me
is- it
too,
is-
really.
That's awesome.
There's a lot of great music in Memphis.
Yes, home of the blues. Excellent.
Home of
Beale
the
Street.
Blues. I
Beale Street.
the
Beale Street is a touristy area, but some of these touristy areas are they're that way for a reason. So, once in a while we'd like to go down. It's a late show though. You want to be ready to. You don't even go down till late. So
right.
So-
good music.
So guys my age, we would want to take a nap in the afternoon.
Exactly. Take a nap at 4, get up at 7. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Take a shower and get the night going. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I remember the band I was in 30 years ago. We went to Memphis for 3 weeks, and I went down to Beale Street, went down to BB King's place, and
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun, man. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But anyway, we're not here to talk about the good
Right.
old days of my previous life. We're here to talk about Robert and the book that Robert wrote.
Yes.
The book that you wrote, I'm going to pull the book up here. It is called The Jeep Show, and I can never remember the subtitle. A Trooper at the Battle of the Bulge. And how did all of this come about? Because I saw the book. I read it. I read a little bio on it on Amazon, and I'm like, is this a history book? Is it a fiction book? What is Robert doing here?
Thanks for asking. It's a novel. It happens to be quite historically accurate, but it's a novel. I'll tell you how I got on the topic of the Battle of the Bulge and this trooper. I was going to write a book about something called the Oxydol Circus, which was a legend at the soap company I started working at when I was young was Procter and Gamble. And at Procter and Gamble, one of the legendary stories was about the Oxydol Circus. Basically, a circus promoter sold the Oxydol brand manager on sponsoring the traveling circus about 1968. Turned out to be a disaster, funny in retrospect only. But I was going to write about this, and I managed to reach the circus promoter's daughter. The circus promoter, Jim Hetzer, was long gone. And I managed to reach his daughter just to get some background. And she said, oh, yes, he did that. But did you know he was an enlisted entertainer in the Morale Corps in World War II?
Wow.
And I said, I did not know that there were enlisted entertainers in World War II,
That's what I was thinking.
Or that there was a Morale Corps. And she said, oh, yes. These soldiers were organized to go to do Jeep shows. That's the title of the book, Jeep Show. They would do Jeep shows in places where the USO, which is a civilian organization, could not go. So 3 MOS 442s, that is entertainment specialist. 3 MOS 442s would get in a Jeep with a driver, and they would drive to really just behind the front lines. And combat infantry would be pulled back for maybe a hot meal and a uniform exchange. And they'd put on almost like a vaudeville type variety show. They'd one of them would play an instrument, the organ, they'd tell jokes, they'd sing and dance. They'd always pull a soldier out of the audience so he could perform for his buddies. And they would do up to 7 or 8 of these shows a day, moving down the front lines. So when I found out about, when I found out about this, I was like, well, I've got to write about this. And oh, by the way, she told me that her father was in a Jeep show squad with a gentleman named Mickey Rooney. Now, you guys are probably a little young, but Mickey Rooney, in 1939, Mickey Rooney was the #1 Hollywood box office attraction. He was Mickey Rooney, who figures in the book. Mickey Rooney was a genius actor and performer. His personal life was one gigantic party, night after night after night. He could have, he came under pressure, as many celebrities of draft age did. He came under pressure to join up. He joined the Army in late 43. He could have done his service at Hal Roach Studios in Hollywood, 12 minutes from his house, but he chose to go to the European Theater of Operations and kind of go all the way. So once I found out about this, I knew I had to write about it. I wanted to make it fiction so I could involve the main character, who is a Morale Corps soldier, in the Battle of the Bulge, because, as you probably know, the Battle of the Bulge is the largest battle ever fought by the U.S. Army. Took place in terrible conditions, featured some incredible resistance by a completely surprised, American Army, both in the northern shoulder of the German attack and also at Bastogne in the southwest. And so that's how Jeep Show came about.
I thought it was pretty wild. I thought it was pretty cool. So I did, as I said, I did read some of it and some of the book, and I thought it was really wild that they just loaded stuff up. They did a show, they'd move on down the road, do another one, move on down the road, do another one. And at one point, the main character got stuck somewhere and ended up, they thought he was a German for a while, and right. Right.
Well, I won't give too much away, but this is he is early-ish in the book. He and Mickey Rooney and their third partner are doing a show in a little town in Luxembourg called Hosingen. And Hosingen is right on the German border. And by December of 1944, the Americans were on the German border in Luxembourg and Belgium, somewhat too thinly spread out. So he is doing a show for a company. It's a company-sized strong point at Hosingen. And as it happens, after the show, they have to evacuate a wounded soldier. So he loses his seat in the Jeep. And of course, we'll just take the supply truck back the next day and catch up with everybody. Well, the next day is December 16th, which at 5 a.m. on December 16th, the Germans began the attack that became what we call the Battle of the Bulge. So he is caught on the absolute front lines of the Battle of the Bulge. In fact, he is the first GI to see actual German soldiers coming over the hill. And the book traces his journey. He stays about 1 hour ahead of the German forces. He's given a captured map that he's supposed to take back to the general's headquarters. And he stays about one step ahead of the Germans the whole time. But very accurately, his adventures follow the actual path of the attack in the middle sector of the Battle of the Bulge. So it's historically accurate. I just use my imagination to stick an entertainment soldier in the middle of all this.
That's an entertainment soldier. I love that. I figured back in the late 80s when I was in high school that if I had to enlist, I had two choices. I was either going to run to Canada or enlist in the band so I could play with Bob Hope. That's kind of what my game plan was.
Well, interestingly, the band is okay until it's not okay, because one of the things that really happened is the regimental band was caught in the attack, and fortunately they knew how to use their weapons because they'd been to basic and all that. So the regimental band had to hold the line for a while down in the South, and some of them made it back to Bastogne, and we get the story from one of them in Bastogne of what it was like. But as you know, you can be in the band, or you can be an entertainment soldier, or you can be a cook, but you're under orders. And if you're under orders, you can be thrown in the thick of it, and you're trained, maybe you haven't fired your rifle since you left, camp. Yeah. Since you left Camp Fort. But so yes, band is good duty until it's not.
It's kind of neat how you you had mentioned the MOS, and for people that don't know, military occupational specialty. Being in the Army myself, I was a radio communications maintainer, 31 uniform. Just so hearing that, it's just like kind of brings you back to the my military days to start having flashbacks.
Well, I was certainly inspired. My dad, of course, almost every baby boomer, their father was in World War II in the service, because every young man was in the service from 1942 to 1946. So I was really inspired by my father, and then his younger brother, my Uncle George, joined the Navy at 17 during World War II and saw combat in the Pacific. So I have always had incredibly high respect for veterans, and of course respect for my father and uncle. And it helped me feel a little bit closer. My dad's been gone for a long time, but there's a chapter, Charlie, you haven't gotten to it, but you're going to love it when you get to it. In World War II, the Queen Mary, which was the largest luxury liner in the world, was turned into a troop ship. And as a luxury liner, it carried 2,300 passengers. As a troop ship, it carried 16,000 GIs and their equipment. My father went to war on the Queen Mary. So when I wrote this chapter, I did way too much research on the Queen Mary, got all into how the steam, the boiler room and the steam pipes and all. None of which made it into the book because I had an editor who forbid me to write a 500-page book. But so I was inspired by that, and my father's service and my Uncle George's service. And in fact, I'm giving $1 per copy sold to a veterans organization called Shields and Stripes, which serves veterans and first responders that just need some extra help transitioning. Awesome. I when I was talking to them, and they're great people, as you'd expect, when I was talking to them, I told them, I would give you all the profits from the sale of the book, but $1 per copy is way, way, way more. The writing life.
That's funny.
Right.
Yeah. That's funny. So speaking of that too, what goes into, we know a lot of authors. Charlie and I have had authors on. Personally, I aspire to be one at some point. But the first I've gotten is writing crappy articles.
That's a start.
That's a start. So with that, how did you come about saying, okay, I'm going to do this? Was there a stepping stone, a back and forth as far as I'm going to do it? Nah, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Kind of a, disappointing portion. Walk us through that a little bit.
I got started. I actually wrote a nonfiction book first. I went through a very low period in my life. Must be, 15 years ago now. And I still had to go to work, even though I was feeling just terrible. And so I go to work and sit at my desk, and I just started journaling about, why I was feeling so terrible. And after I got better, I just kept at it. So I wrote a nonfiction book, and I knew I could write a book. And then this topic, kind of fell into my lap. And I didn't have any hesitation, because what I figured out is writing is my work. Writing, and we all have to try to find out what our work is. It may not be how you earn a living. It may be something else. I guess if you're lucky, it's how you earn a living. When you have young children, your work is raising children. But so I found out that writing is my work, and so if I'm not working at some writing, I just after a couple of days, I feel like I'm wasting my time. So I've never had any writer's block. But the mistake I made on this novel, and I got it done anyways, but I was given a warning by an experienced writer, which I unfortunately ignored, and he said, really understand exactly what the plot is before you do a lot of research, because if you do a lot of research before you understand the plot, a lot of that's going to be wasted. And guys, research is fun and writing is hard. Matt, you're writing, research is, so I, of course, did way too much research. And I had these, there are very short flashbacks at the end of each chapter. They're short enough that the pace of the book keeps going. Well, they weren't always that way. I wrote entire long chapters of these flashbacks because I had learned so much about vaudeville, or about, Billy Sunday, the famous evangelist, or whatever, the engine room of the Queen Mary. And my editor, read the draft. The draft I sent her was probably about my eighth or ninth draft. And she said, you cannot take your readers away from the story for 30 pages on, a vaudeville show. So, and I'm smart enough that I don't argue with my editor, so that was the only, Matt, the only thing I would do differently, and will do differently next time. I'm writing a sequel right now, because the book has done very well, and it's an interesting story. And the Korean War happens in 1951 to 53. So I'd like to involve this character in the Korean War as well. He may be a civilian at that point. I'm not sure. And yes, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so it's you've basically taking a real life story that's happened, and you've tweaked a little bit and added your own pizzazz to it. It sounds like Hollywood movies, right? Because that's kind of what they do. I remember talking with John Tig Tigan, one of the Benghazi heroes. He's been on our show, Meet the Pressers. He's a good friend of mine. He's been a guest co-host, and I said to him when Clint and I interviewed him, I was like, so was there anything different in real life that Michael Biehn did in the movies? He's like, yeah, vehicles don't blow up like that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Right. So it just, when you were saying that, it kind of made me think of that conversation with him in that context of, taking it, be like, oh, okay, let me add this pizzazz, this my thought process. You bring it to life in your own way, which is fascinating.
Matt, what I did, where I took the liberties is I dragged this guy into the Battle of the Bulge, which, in his life didn't happen. And then I took many liberties along the way. I wanted to show, I wanted to stick him in Paris before he gets assigned to Jeep shows, and he runs into a corrupt soldier who's, trying to bribe him into giving him his gasoline, coupons or whatever. But I also put in, so I made up this story, but it's within a very realistic very realistic construct. And I put in many Easter eggs for World War II. I guess I'd call them nerds, which I have become one. World War II buffs. Right. And one, I think I'm sure you know about this, but are you familiar with M1 Thumb, Matt, from your service?
M1 Thumb.
Yeah.
It's also known, you ready for this? There's a big YouTuber. It's also known as Grand Thumb.
Grand Thumb.
Yes. So I put it without naming it. I didn't name it in the book, but the main character is getting some instruction from from a sergeant, and the sergeant is saying something like, you know, I know you love your M1 Garand, you know, and the main character looks down at his bruised thumb and he thinks, I do not love my M1. Matt, of course, that weapon long predated your service, but basically you probably know the M1 was the standard issue rifle in World War II. It was semi-automatic, and it had an N block clip, I think it was 9 rounds. And so you would jam, you know, the clip, the bolt would come open when the used clip would fly out. You would jam the new clip in that, and then the bolt was spring action, and it would fly back at a great rate of speed. And if you were inexperienced and you let your thumb trail where the bolt wanted to close, it would close on your thumb, and you would have a black and blue thumb for a month. So I put those kind of details in so that the World War II buffs would, you know, have delight in discovering these Easter eggs. And since I did way too much research, I have a lot of them.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
That's great.
Thank you.
I had a question here. So you were talking about writing, and I don't know if you've read the book by Stephen Pressfield called The War of Art.
I have read that. Yes, I have read that a time or two.
One of the things that I got from that book is he said he talked to a writer, and he asked the writer, he said, do you write when you're inspired? He says, yes, I do. Fortunately, I'm inspired every day from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, obviously it's not about the being inspired. It's about getting your butt in the seat and starting typing and getting, like you said, getting the work done.
Yeah.
Isn't that with everything?
Oh,
yeah.
Totally.
And it helps to be an introvert, and it helps to be an early riser, because it's very quiet at, you know, 5 a.m, and, you know, you can do your writing. But yes, I agree. It's a little like climbing a mountain, you know, writing a book, and sometimes it's like climbing a mountain in a dense fog. You know, you can't even really see where you are. So you write the first draft. I call it the zero draft, and the zero draft is almost unreadable to anyone but you. You know, in fact, my zero draft, I would write instructions to myself. You know, I'd write, you know, this is terrible. You need to this is terrible. Get rid of it. And then, you know, check it out in the next draft. But you have to write a very, very bad first draft, but you just have to write it. You know, you just have to keep going. And then you're going to revise it about 5 times. And then you're going to show it to an editor, and she's going to say, you know, chapter 6 is horrible. Just get rid of it. Chapter 7 should be 2 chapters. And by the way, this is literally what my editor said to me. It's such a shame to end such a good book on such a terrible last chapter.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. She's from, should I mention? She's from New York. Well, you know,
shocking.
Yeah. And she knew what she was talking about. So I totally rewrote it, and it's much better. But yeah, yes, you have to be prepared. So yes, I agree with, you know, you've got to sit and you got to write, whether you have a certain number of words you're going to do every day or a certain number of hours. That's how you get it done.
How did you figure out what to mix between history and fiction? Like when I read things that are, what's the word? It's biographical fiction, right? Like I remember when I was young, I read some Henry Miller books, Tropic of Capricorn, Tropic of Cancer, and he said they were real things that happened, but the people that it wasn't the real people. It's not like he changed the names to protect the innocent, because I don't think in the Henry Miller book there are any innocent people. But anyway, so it was like, how do you? Okay, so you've got Mickey Rooney, and how do you come up with the storyline, and then how do you come up with the dialogue between a real person that was there and that was doing this, and then somebody that you've made up? Well,
I'm going to break that into 2 questions. How you come up with the storyline. you kind of become a scavenger. You do a lot of research, you read a lot of books, you kind of become a scavenger where you're looking for, little jewels, that you take and you put in your bag and keep. So for example, when I was doing research on the Queen Mary, I came across the tale of a British soldier who was being transported on another troop ship to Egypt or somewhere far, far away. And they had saltwater showers. They couldn't use fresh water on the ship, so they had saltwater showers. And he was using this soap that was made specifically to use in salt water. And he had lathered up his head really well, really lathered up shampooing his hair. And the all quarters klaxon came, and he had to leave the shower and get to his station at the lifeboat while he had all this suds in his hair, and it was sunny. And so as he stood, and they stood at stations for an hour, because there was a U-boat, sighted possibly. So they were at their stations, and the sun was beating down on his head, and all this lather turned solid on him. God. And it took he had to eventually, I think they had to shave off all his hair to get his helmet back on. So I came across this story, and I was like, oh, that is such a good story. I'm going to use that. So my protagonist has a very similar adventure on the Queen Mary. He gets caught in the shower. He's the last guy. And the only difference is Mickey Rooney is also at his station. And Mickey Rooney's like pulling out a pencil and a piece of paper and writing it down for his next movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny. That is funny.
Yeah. So you kind of become a scavenger, where you're collecting different anecdotes that you come across.
Right.
You got to weave it. It's not fantasy. This isn't fantasy. This isn't.
Right.
I'm weaving it into historically accurate things, right. But I'm pulling gems from wherever I found them and
right.
using them. The second part of yes, Matt.
I was just gonna say that just seems so like that would be harder to keep organized and keep somewhat to period than writing something just from scratch, right? I mean, I can only imagine as you're talking about, I'm already lost trying to think of like how I would organize this. That's really awesome.
You write things down, you have a big long list of ideas that you've got, and you end up not using most of them. So, there's fancy ways, but you can just pull out a yellow pad and just write down, 80 pages of your ideas. And of course, as time goes by, you see which, the cream rises to the top. You see which really fit the story and the character. Sure. But yeah, you got to keep them organized. On the dialogue, one thing, readers don't like dense explanations, especially in fiction. They don't like big, long paragraphs explaining things. And in fact, if you have big, long paragraphs explaining things, readers usually skip ahead to the dialogue. So you use dialogue to show a lot of things. Either, there's a war correspondent in the book, and I use him shamelessly to be talking about big issues that the private wouldn't know about. So the war correspondent is talking with him in Bastogne, and he's explaining General McAuliffe's defense plan of Bastogne, and how McAuliffe put all the artillery essentially in the middle of Bastogne, and thus could fire, imagine being able to fire around the face of a clock, so that the Germans might mass to attack at 9 o'clock. Well, the artillery's in the middle of the clock. So they are, they're able to fire at a 360 degree aspect. And the ordinary soldier would not have been told this, would not know this. So part of dialogue is you're bringing in somebody else so you can tell the reader things that that your protagonist is learning while he's being told. The term of art is exposition. And you want to do that as gracefully as possible, rather than just, hitting the reader over the head with a big long paragraph. The other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to capture how people talked in the late 30s and early 40s. So I watched a lot of movies from that time, and read. There were some great detective novels written in the late 30s. The Maltese Falcon, The Big Sleep. They're excellent books even now,
Right.
but they are full of slang and idioms and period dialogue. So again, I would read these books with a highlighter in my hand, and I like, oh, I got to use that. I got to use that turn of phrase. So again, you're collecting it, and but yes, you want to use. I chose, anyways, to be fairly dialogue heavy because I felt it made the story easier to follow.
That's so cool.
Thanks.
That's cool. That's a lot of work.
How long did it take?
Right, like I sit here.
Oh, shit.
Wow.
I've got a friend that's I write articles for a couple websites, and I have a friend that will send me a press release, and he's like, dude, you should turn this into an article. I'm like, I don't know how to. They're giving us, this is like Joe Friday. They give us just the facts. I don't know what else to say other than what they told me. So
Joe Friday.
Right, like I know, right?
Well,
look, reruns when I was a kid. So I don't know how to do this, and that takes a lot of writing skill.
Charlie, one of the things you remind me of is when you write a book and people know that you've written a book, very well-meaning people will come up to you and say, you ought to write about the XYZ. You ought to write about the this or the that. And you don't say it, but you're thinking, Mister, you have no idea how hard it is. Yeah, I could take the next 5 years of my life and write about XYZ, but I've got other plans.
Right, I've got stuff to do. I've had a few people say that I should write a book, and I'm like, my book would be more like a pamphlet. Okay.
Right. Yeah. You gotta.
Hilarious.
I wouldn't recommend it.
So how do you go? How do you go about making the decision whether you want to self-publish, if you're good enough to edit it yourself, if you go through a publisher? I mean, how does that come about?
I'll tell you how I did it. I self-published this. I certainly could have gotten at least a small publisher to do it, but in this day and age, if you're published by a small publisher, you end up doing your own marketing anyways. And then you have to give up 3/4 of your profits if there are any. So my background is marketing, market sales and marketing. So I know how to write a marketing plan. I know how to identify a target audience. I know how to read research, and so I felt that it would just be faster and more profitable for me to self-publish. I have my own subchapter S company, so got some tax advantages.
Nice.
But if for a writer that was without marketing sales background, I would recommend trying to get an agent and a publisher, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, you make a good point too. If you're just starting out and you really don't know what to do, like you alluded to that you do, and you're not sure if you're going to make any money from it, then in some sense it might be good to go with a big company that that buys into what your project is, because then if they promote it well and it goes good, then they're going to make profit, but they earned it, and you're at least getting now.
Absolutely,
you're on the stage now. You're on the world stage.
Yeah. And you can work on your next book. It's as you'd expect. It's extremely competitive to get any kind of a decent deal from a publisher. And of course, they're going to go first with people they know. So, the emerging writer is really going to have to be patient and put up with a lot. One thing you mentioned about self-editing, you can't self-edit. I'm sure some people do, but you cannot edit your own work. You're just way too close to it. If I had self-edit, Yeah, if I had self-edited it, this book would be 600 pages long. And Charlie, you wouldn't have gotten to page 25, because there would have been some massive diversion about vaudeville or whatever. I don't know what.
Right. Now that as a guy who used to play in a band, I'd be interested in that.
Right. Yeah,
that's valid. You're too closely connected to it. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Absolutely.
You want everything in there. You don't want to take anything out, and nobody's going to be able to convince you because you're convincing yourself.
Yeah, because it's right. You have to convince yourself this is what you want. You know it's what you want. You wrote it.
Yeah, and sure. one of the mistakes I didn't make is I don't argue with my editors.
Smart.
I'm paying them for edit. So, you've heard the saying, why keep a dog and bark yourself? I wouldn't say that to them because it's very canine, but that, I selected these. Yeah, I selected these editors. They know what they're doing. And even though their advice is painful, that's what I was paying for.
Yeah.
Right. My goodness.
Well, that makes total sense, sir. Total sense.
Yeah. It does. One of the things I thought was kind of interesting about the characters, not just he went out to be an what did you call it? Entertainment soldier?
Entertainment specialist. There we go. MOS 442.
Gotcha. Oh, he also did this at he was 31 when this happened, when he did this, right?
Yes.
So that's a little low to be enlisting. He's got a wife and a kid.
I got a wife and a kid. And in World War II, having a child was a rock solid deferment. As you probably know, the draft boards were all made up of leading local citizens. And despite what the Department of the Army really would have liked, there wasn't one draft board that drafted a father of a child. So the fact that this soldier is the father of a young child, and in fact, he's got a dance act with his wife. By the way, his wife is much more talented than he is, as often happens.
Right.
And he joins the Army nonetheless. There's some reading between the lines as to why. Of course, he did it, out of patriotism and out of wanting to serve. But there's some reading between the lines I leave to the readers as to what his motivation might have been to kind of make a whole new life for himself. His wife wasn't pleased, by the way, both in actual life and in the book. His wife is unpleased with his decision.
Less than thrilled. Sure. I mean, look, she's a young wife, with a young child, and he's going to go off.
Yep.
God knows what's going to happen to him.
He's breaking up their act. Yep. Yeah. He may not come back. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Absolutely. So I wondered at the motivation and put in a few clues about, that he might be just trying to kind of escape from all the hassles of normal adult life. You guys know about that.
Well, this is why we have a podcast here. We have a show to escape normal life. What are you talking about?
I'm going to tell you, that's a very healthy outlet. It's way better than some others I can think of.
I wish I had some of those others, I'll tell you. Oh, my goodness. So you think there's... So you said there's going to be another book, and this is going to be when the main character is... you said during the Korean War, right?
Yeah, there's a lot that happened. First of all, I got to get to the Oxidol Circus at some point, and that happened in 1968. So, and I think that'll be volume 3 if I live that long. But the period after, right now I'm thinking about is 1946 to 1953, which would encompass the Korean War, 1951 to 53, but also the GI Bill. The GI Bill was passed in late 1944, and basically it provided loans and cash for returning soldiers to buy a house and or go to college. And the GI Bill fundamentally changed American society. And a very example that's very close to my heart. My dad grew up in a working class Irish Catholic family in Waterbury, Connecticut. Nobody had ever been to college. Well, he ended up at Yale in the GI Bill. and graduated from Yale. He was a little out of his element, he told me, but he managed to graduate. And so he had he was a financial person all his working life, and sent his children to college. So I'm thinking of sending this now 33-year-old returning veteran, just to make his wife even more impatient. He's gonna go to college on the GI Bill. I know.
You want
we'll see if I can pull.
You want him to get divorced,
right? So then the third
I want the tension. I want the tension.
Yeah. Well, for sure.
So I want to talk about that. That thing, because a lot of us don't know about it now, but it fundamentally changed American society. So that's my big plans. We'll see what I get done.
I'll be a little show a little candor here, and it's funny because as you're talking about some of that, I'm thinking to myself, back when I was in the Army, I went into the Army. We were I shouldn't say freshly married. We got emancipated at 15 and 16. We got married at 16 and 17, had our first child shortly after that at 16 and 17, and I went straight into the military. And went away. I never went to war, but I did get deployed, here and there throughout the 3 years that I was in active duty. Then fast forward all these years later, and we've got 10 grandkids, 3 kids, and 4 kids, and our youngest child is 9. So I'm just doing more law enforcement stuff now. So it's kind of like at 50 years old, my wife's like, what are you doing? And back then it was just I have this desire, this inside me to to do more, be more. And, now it's I'm gonna probably fall asleep with the book in my hands, just picturing myself in those characters.
We don't have time for this tonight, but I would love to hear on a podcast you explain how you get married at that age and you stay married as you both grow up. That must be easy. Quite a tale. Right.
That's the book that Matt needs to write.
Right.
I keep telling my wife that she needs to write a book about her life, because we both didn't. I mean, my life growing up as a kid wasn't as bad as hers. Hers was pretty bad, and people could learn from it, and they can grow from it and heal from some of the stuff she went through as a kid. So, but she's just like, nope. She don't want to think about it. She doesn't want to put it down on paper, because then she's yeah, so it's trauma, PTSD.
Yeah, there's a great saying they taught us at Procter and Gamble, and which is, you've written it down, you haven't thought it through, and she may not want to think it through, as you say.
Yeah, that's probably the gist of it for sure.
Yeah. Well,
I have a friend, a couple of friends of mine that we were in Toastmasters together for quite a while, and my buddy married his high school sweetheart, and they had kids, and they're still together in their late 50s. And so we were talking one time, and I'm like, I can't believe you guys have been together. So they actually wrote a book about, I think it was like 14 things they did to keep their relationship healthy and good, and they don't argue. They get along. He does what she wants to do. She does stuff with him. She does her things. He does things she does. And they have a great relationship. And at one point, he ran for office. Yeah, he ran for office. Then they moved to Florida. That didn't work out. They moved to Florida. They worked at a nursing home. Then they bought a tractor trailer. They drove around the country. Right? No, they totally. They did this for probably 2 years, and now he's got a job as a 6th grade English teacher down in Florida.
Huh. That's cool.
And they both left their jobs so they could go do the tractor trailer thing and see the country. And I'm like, God bless you guys, man.
That is pretty awesome. That is pretty awesome for sure.
And I only stopped arguing with my wife about 2 years ago, so I feel really, really bad in comparison.
I still don't stop.
Yeah,
I got divorced. So much easier.
Charlie, I get divorced.
I have no one to argue with now. I love it.
That brings its own set of problems.
Very true. Very true.
for sure. But when people want to argue about stuff, I'm like, dude, I'm divorced. I don't argue anymore. Like, I mean,
That's hilarious. That's
do it.
hilarious. Sad but hilarious.
Yeah, this is true.
Oh well.
It's true.
Super. Well,
So,
this is good. This is good. I love this. So go ahead, Charlie.
I was going to ask. So one of the other questions I had is, have you always been a history buff? Like, I'm not. I'm not necessarily a history buff. So when I saw this,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, wait a second. This might be kind of cool. I really don't know much about the Battle of the Bulge. So it's,
Right.
it's not learning about. It is learning about the Battle of the Bulge, but not. I don't want to say not accurately, but it is accurately. It's
I was a history major in college and enjoyed that, and have read history kind of for fun. I went through a big Winston Churchill phase for about 3 years where I smoked cigars and drank scotch and wore suspenders and just looked like a total ass the whole time. But I enjoyed it, and but I outgrew that.
Then you're right. Then your wife started talking to you again, right?
Wow.
And then there's a fabulous series of books on Lyndon Johnson written by a guy named Robert Caro, Caro. It's absolutely, if you're a history buff, it's just almost like reading poetry. So yeah, I have read history about 10 years ago, and I never read any fiction. And about 10 years ago, I switched almost entirely to reading novels because, for the storytelling.
Absolutely.
So I've always been interested in reading and in history.
Well, and you, when you say that too, it makes me think that you're probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking you're probably using that ability to see what other writers are writing so that you can kind of get ideas and ways to maybe develop and create your own article or your own.
Absolutely. And, absolutely. In fact, I made a practice. I picked out 3 books that I thought were really masterpieces. And I read, and this is over, 6 years. I read them. I kept reading them in rotation. So I think I ended up reading each of them about 6 times. One of them was Huckleberry Finn. Huckleberry Finn is the probably the best novel that's ever been written in America. And it's absolutely brilliant. So I'm reading that. And then there was a book written in the late 70s called Ragtime. And it's about America at the turn of the century, and it's very unique in its approach. And then there was a spy novel called A Perfect Spy by the British writer John le Carre, which is so I kept would read these over and over and see how they handled dialogue and see how they handled when you end a chapter, you really don't want to pick right up in the very next chapter. You don't want to take the reader exactly where the reader wants to go. You want to create a little tension, and so I picked that up from reading these things. So yeah, you can always learn from the masters, no matter what trade or profession you're in, and that was certainly one way that I did.
That's so cool.
That's great.
Thanks.
What else do we have? We crossed all my questions off. I got a question. Was was Mickey Rooney really at these? Was the Zoo shows were similar to like portable USOs, right?
Portable USOs with not with civilians though. It was sort of Mickey in when he's telling some jokes, Mickey's to the soldiers, he said, we're kind of a K-ration version of USO, not so great, but much more portable.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
of course,
so cool though. I didn't even know that was something that they had back then. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. I did a lot of research on K rations. I don't know why, but I got really sidelined on K rations and what all was in it, and how the soldiers felt about it and all that. So those appear. K rations figure in one of the chapters.
All right. All right. What's a K ration? Tell us what that is.
Oh, a K ration was I think, Matt, what you guys called an MRE. or a meal
Correct.
ready to eat. It was the ancestor of the meal ready to eat. So a K
Yep.
ration was a cardboard box about this long and about this tall, and they made a breakfast they made a breakfast, they made a lunch, and they made a supper. And so you tear the box open, and by the way, the box stop me when this gets too much, by the way, Charlie.
No.
But the box was coated with wax. And the reason it was coated with wax is you could make a little fire. You know, once you got all the contents out, you could tear up the box and make a little fire and warm up some water that way. So the K ration would contain a little can of Spam or some other, meat. It would contain a chocolate bar. It would contain, this is interesting, contain a pack of 3 cigarettes and some toilet paper. And I think a fruit bar and some lemonade powder, which all the GIs hated universally. And Matt, you probably know some ingredients in the MREs that weren't super popular. Even in
the crackers sucked. The peanut butter was like dry. The Tabasco sauce was in there because you had to use the Tabasco sauce to try to get it down.
See, Charlie, this is timeless. This is the soldiers' complaint about their portable rations is a timeless. I'm sure in the Civil War they were also complaining about the the pork getting or the
it's not the same, but I've spent a lot of time playing gigs at weddings, and we would always get a one-bone chicken meal. Like it's a hunk of chicken with one bone. We're like, I don't even know if this is connected to the meat.
Wow. So you have been a wedding singer.
Oh yeah, I played in a wedding band for 10 years. Yeah.
There's no end to you. There's no end to you. So what you made me think of this, and again another thing I became fascinated with, and Matt, you've worn the modern version, but the M43 field jacket, which was the standard issue in the Army. Was the combat soldiers could not carry a lot of gear, threw away their gas masks. They did not like to carry a pack. The M43 field jacket had 4. It was an olive drab, field jacket, skirt down to about the hips. It had 4 huge pockets, 2 pockets here and 2 hip pockets. Yep. And the GIs, I mean, if you reached into the hip pocket of one of the GIs in the Battle of the Bulge, you'd pull out a toothbrush, a couple of K ration packages, a hand grenade, and a letter from home. And that's just one pocket. These guys, right. I mean, they became portable. They were not just a garment; they were a suitcase, that had sleeves. These infantry that are frontline combat, they're always moving, they're exhausted, they're living in, super uncomfortable conditions. They maybe brush their teeth, once a month. They get a shower, they're wearing the same uniform day and night for weeks and weeks and weeks. Well, they don't want to carry anything extra. So that I became very interested in the field jacket, and it figures again, what's in the field jacket pockets figure into one chapter. And Charlie, by the way, the book is available in audio book form. So, if you decide you'd rather listen to it while you're jogging or mountain climbing,
driving everywhere.
While I'm driving, yes, I drive a lot. This is true.
Okay.
That might be
perfect. Perfect for you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
perfect for you.
Well, listen, we need to wrap things up. So how can people find the hard copy, the digital copy, or the audio book?
Jeep Show, A Trooper at the Battle of the Bulge, is available on Amazon, audiobook, ebook, and printed book, and also at bookshop.org if you don't like Amazon. I have a website, and it's jeepshowbook.com. And I want to, I put some content there that my editor made me take out of the book. As I said, I followed her advice, but I'd like to read, I wrote a fictional column by the war correspondent about the American soldier that he wrote at the end of the war. And if you'll grant me the 45 seconds, I'd like to read you and your listeners the last paragraph because it really means a lot to me. So the last paragraph of this fictional article, which is on the website, is America fielded millions of citizen soldiers who disliked the goddamn army, were ambivalent about their officers, and resisted the trappings of military hierarchy, aka chicken shit. Yet many of them will remember their service as the ennobling experience of their lives. If you ask them, they will tell you they fought not for their country or for lofty ideals. They will tell you they fought for each other, for their buddies, to get the job done and get home. Whenever I read that, my voice catches a little, and I think of my dad and, being so far from home at age 19 and my uncle at age 17. But the American Army in World War II was unique. We'll never see the likes of it again. And we will all profit by learning more about it. And I wrote this story in essence to tell about the American Army in World War II in a way that, people would find entertaining and sometimes funny and sometimes tragic.
Very cool. Well, I've like I said, I'm about a third of the way through the book. I'm enjoying it. Come on, Charlie.
Get with it, dude. Get with it.
Look, I hate to tell this to people. I like buying books more than I like reading them.
Oh, I know. I do too.
Every time I buy a book, I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. And then I read like 2 pages and I start drifting off. I'm like, come on, dude, get up. You got to, it just takes forever for me. Yeah. So
leave it in the bathroom. Leave it in the bathroom. That's 5 minutes of good reading, a day. It's something.
This is true. I take it in the car with me, but
I hate to think about Charlie, I do hate to think about my book being in your bathroom now that
you got to sign it though.
Right.
Before.
Right.
Right. No, he did sign it before. He did. All right. Well, listen, let's wrap things up here. So Robert, thank you very much for being on the show with us. Again, like I said, when the next book comes out, please have your people reach out to us and let's get you on again.
Very good.
If you, what am I thinking here? What are we doing, Matt? Oh, we're not doing a giveaway tonight, are we?
No, not tonight.
We're not going to do it tonight. All right. So yeah, we're at the beginning of the month. If you have been watching the show, please go to meetthepressers.com/giveaway, enter the code JEEP. And we are going to be giving away, what is it? I can't read it fast enough. We're going to be giving away a Mantis X10 and a SIRT pistol.
Mantis X10 just this month. Yep.
Just the Mantis X10, which is great. It's a great practicing tool if you want to dry fire at home. Please go find Robert's book, the Jeep Show book, or Jeep Show book. We put a link in the comments there. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on his website. And we thank you guys for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed to Riding Shotgun with Charlie and to Meet the Pressers YouTube channels, please do. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thank you very much.
Be safe.
Good night.